computer. So we are going to be recording. Welcome. So we are going to do a session on scholarships. And Lori Ellis is our presenter. She is from the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. We're going to ask that you help us fund and support us by please keeping your mics on mute when you are not speaking, please. Please use the chat box and sign in your name and your preferred pronouns, please. And the region, as well as any other questions you may have as we go. This is an interactive session about money and how we can help our migrant kids. We would like to let you know that we are being recorded, please, and to turn off your video if you do not want to be recorded, so we can continue here. And I would like to introduce you to Lori Ellis. She is going to be speaking with us until about 10:40 this morning. And excuse me, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions as well. And I will give Ms. Lori a 5-minute notice before the session is over so that we can keep on track. So thank you so much, Lori, for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Good morning, everybody. Few names I recognize. That's always a good sign when people keep coming back to your session. So hello, everybody that I've met, and hello to those I have not. I have my contact information on the screen, and I love to hear from folks in the field. So if you and I have not connected, please email me, say hello, and love to connect and get you connected with OSAC and some of the webinars we've been doing and other trainings. So just quickly, if you all could put in the chat what your level of familiarity or comfortableness is with financial aid. So scholarships, grants, loans, FAFSA, ORSA. So a lot, a little, meh. And I'll be checking that out. So then that way I can definitely cater this presentation to your knowledge of expertise. All right, so we're going to talk about finding funds for Oregon students. There is a big component in this about scholarships, and I am going to share a little bit just about financial aid and how to get started on that. So thank you, everybody, for these comments. Most of you are kind of in the middle, a little to a middle. So that's a little to a middle. That's great. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So just to start really quickly, free student aid, so free money. These are grants, scholarships, and work study. The way to apply for these is through the FAFSA, so the federal application. These are grants are government funded, so state, federal. There are some from the university, but most of them are that you're familiar with are state and federal, so like the Pell Grant, Oregon Opportunity Grant, and the Oregon Promise, and these are primarily need-based, so based on the student's expected family contribution, the EFC. Scholarships are typically privately funded, and it's based on the student's needs, so again, that EFC, expected family contribution, or who the student is, what their story is, their grades, what they want to be when they graduate from high school. So who the student is, and then work study is also need-based. If your student is eligible for work study and that shows up as part of their financial aid package, please encourage them to accept it. Work study is a phenomenal opportunity for students. And if for some reason at the end, the student's like, I don't really want it, they can always turn it down, but they can't get it back if they turn it down and the money's gone. And Jeanette, thank you for your nods. That's very helpful. So for student loans, just a yes or no in the chat. Who thinks student loans are a bad thing? So are student loans a bad thing? Yes or no? Awesome. Why are you at this session? Y'all know everything. So, I mean, I'm happy you're here. So they are not a bad thing. Wonderful. That's the first time I've seen this many no's. I see a yes and a no. So the important thing about federal loans is this could be, oh, hello, baby. This could be the reason that a student can go to school, is that they've gotten their award package, but they still need some student loans. They need that student loan to get them further in the process. So it's not a bad thing as long as your students and families know what they're signing. The federal loans, they need to complete the FAFSA. Private loans are a separate application. Just quickly between FAFSA, federal loans and private loans. Federal loans have a lot of opportunities for repayment. They have a grace period. They have a public service loan forgiveness program that I'm a part of. So working for the state of Oregon, my loans will be forgiven after paying on them for 10 years. If a student can't pay, there's something called an economic hardship. When I was a single parent and I was right out of high school, right out of college, I couldn't make payments. So I had 3 years of something called an economic hardship where the interest was being paid by the government and I didn't have to make payments. So that was really helpful. Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, there are loans for loan forgiveness title, is it 1A? Yeah, okay. So there are lots of other programs out there. So federal loans have those opportunities. Private loans most likely do not. They're also going to have typically higher interest rates than federal loans. So if you're working with families and they're looking at private loans, please make sure they really understand what that means. So let's jump in quickly just to the FAFSA. It opened on October 1st. Students should apply as soon as possible. We have been preaching this for years and years now, and what we're hearing from schools that are working with us is that they're seeing higher financial aid packages when their students apply earlier because some money does run out. So soon after October 1st, the money is for that expected family contribution, the FAFSA, and then scholarship donors also like to see the EFC. So I would have students do it even if they're like, I'm not going to get any money. It's still a really good practice for them to do because honestly, they don't know. The ORSA is the FAFSA alternative. This is Oregon's application. It's for DACA and undocumented Oregon residents. It's on our website at oregonstudentaid.gov. It also opens October 1st, and students should apply as soon after October 1 as possible. If you're working with some students and you don't know or they don't know if they should do the FAFSA or the ORSA, we do have a pre-filter tool on our website, so oregonstudentaid.gov. If you click on FAFSA ORSA, you will eventually get to this pre-filter tool. So students can ask these questions, answer these questions. Then at the end, it'll say, you need to do the FAFSA, you need to do the ORSA, or you're not eligible for either, which is very, very rare. So the Oregon Opportunity Grant is through the FAFSA or the ORSA. It's for undergrad students, and the maximum award for 21-22 was $2,778 for community college, and then 4-year was $3,612. This is money that does not need to be repaid back, and this is out of our office. I'm going to talk about some other grants, but first I just want to throw in to create that students should create an OSAC student portal account. They should not use a school email address because typically a school email address will go away once the student graduates. We like to recommend that a student creates an email for anything connected to college or career. So if they're filling out applications, doing scholarships on the FAFSA, on the ORSA, that they should have a one email that they're going to be checking into. The portal is necessary for these applications and awards out of OSAC. So the Oregon Promise, Chafee Grant, which is for former and current foster youth, Child Care Grant. This is the Oregon National Guard State Tuition Assistance, and then our scholarship application. So back to grants. So they would apply through our portal. The Oregon Promise Grant will help pay tuition at a community college for up to 90 credits. The award this year was $850 to $3,981, and that's based on a lot of different things, but it's cost of attendance and then the expected family contribution. And then you can see some additional information here. All of this information is on our website, and you can always reach out to me. I know I'm going really fast, but there's a lot of information to cover. So it's really a high-level overview. This is really important too. If your student's like, I'm going to a 4-year university, I'm not going to a community college, please have them fill this out anyway. I think it's a total of 5 questions. It takes a maximum of 10 minutes. So if their plans change, then they may have the Oregon Promise Grant in their back pocket if they decide to do something different. This is also really important for students who are dual enrolled, so that if they decide, oh yeah, I'm going to a 4-year, but then, oh, I found out, after I filled out everything, that I can also do community college to take some of my classes. If they didn't fill out Oregon Promise Grant, they will not be able to do it when they realize, ooh, that might be a good opportunity. So we recommend that every single student apply for it. Again, 5 questions. It's really simple. There's no reason not to. And if for some reason they are not going to community college and they get awarded, then they can just say, oh, no, thank you. My plans changed. So the Oregon Promise Grant with the FAFSA ORSA application due date, we have a nice chart. This is also on our website. So when you're working with students who are high school or homeschooled, when are they graduating? So we have 3 different options for graduation date of when in that range, the deadline to complete both, and then when they need to start community college. So there's some pretty clear rules around Oregon Promise and how to use it, and then information if a student is in a GED program, when they're going to complete the GED and when they should be filing for that. We have some other grants at OSAC that I just want to cover quickly. So not all students fall into this. So if you have students who are interested in the Army, Air, or Army Guard, this is an amazing program that's fairly new. There again, more information on our website, but this is a nice chunk of change for students that are interested here. Current and former foster youth who are under 26, there's the Chafee Education and Training Grant. So again, another pocket of money if a student fits into that. We also have a child care grant that recently received some additional funds. So definitely encourage your students to apply if they have children who are age 12 and under. This will help them with childcare when they're in school. If they don't receive it the first year, because it typically goes to juniors and seniors in college, but we did get some additional funds, have them apply every year for the childcare grant, because they never know when they're going to get approved for it, even if they got denied the first or second year. And then deceased and disabled public safety officer, dependents of officers harmed in the line of duty. So again, more specific information on our website. Okay, how's everybody doing? I can see a few faces going pretty well. Okay, I'm going to slow down a little bit now because this is about our scholarship application. Thanks, Robert. And so I want to take some time and talk about how to have a competitive application. So we have one application and it has up to 600 scholarships. These are donors from all over. Some of them may have 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 scholarships that they are funding. Some of them may only have 1. So that's why we have up to 600, because that changes pretty frequently. Mainly grows, doesn't decrease. And how to apply for this is back to that student portal, where the student's going to go into the portal, they're going to apply and complete their information. This is to give you an idea of the different types of scholarships that we have. So the Oregon Teacher Scholars Program, these are students that are entering a college level teaching program. So when you're working with students, to make sure that they know that even so a college level teaching program is more like a master's program. So letting them know not to stop searching for scholarships after their first year of college, completing the FAFSA ORSA every year, doing the OSAC scholarship application every year, looking at their foundation and university scholarships every year, because they will have more opportunities. This is a huge one, $10,000. And it's a program, it's a scholarship and a program because they get additional supports as well. Fred Fields is $4,000 to $10,000, and this is for students looking at CTE majors at a community college. So gives you a range right there. The Trailblazers, this one's easy. If you have students who have quite a bit of community service, have been busy and doing a lot of community service, they can apply for this Trailblazers Legend up to $2,500. They just have to be an Oregon high school graduate and have community service. Couple other options. We have some scholarships that require additional documents or additional essays. So the Seneca Sawmill is up to $10,000, which is a great amount of money, but it requires an additional essay. This one may not be available always, or even this year. The company started it a couple of years ago. and I think we need to take this one off, but I will let you know. I'll connect with the facilitators and make sure everybody knows. But with this one, we do have examples of some that are essay based. So a student just has to fill out that additional essay. These are not as competitive because a lot of students don't want to do additional essays. There was one, so I was reading for one scholarship, and oh my gosh, I had like 100 and some applications to review. And then I was looking at one that had an additional essay, and I had 10 essays to review. So definitely, if you have people who are writers, a little bit more ambitious, motivated, then have them do the ones with the essays. And then I love this one because Franz and Catherine Stenzel could not agree, husband and wife could not agree on what to fund. And so they decided to do 2 scholarships. One is for $5,000 for students in the medical field, college or high school. And then the other one is for non-traditional first-gen students in a non-medical field. So this is just the criteria of those. So if you have students that are fitting into these, they can easily apply for multiple scholarships at one time. Okay, so the application opened November 1st. This is not like the FAFSA or ORSA where students should submit as soon as possible after the deadline. Students should take time with the personal statements and the activities chart to make sure they're really telling their story, they're thorough, they're complete. But if you can work with your students to submit by the February 15th deadline, their name basically goes into a hat for a $1,000 scholarship. We get more and more of these $1,000 scholarships every year because the donors like to get their bulk of scholarships early. They like them to be processed so that they can be awarding early. So that's a really great opportunity right there to fill out the scholarship application for a chance at that $1,000. They must be submitted by 5 p.m. No ifs, ands, or buts. So if a student is
Amanda?
Is there a question? No. So if a student is submitting at 4:56 p.m. and can't get their application in, lots of other people are submitting at that time, and that's not going to cut it. We're going to say, sorry, you should have submitted that earlier. And then the final deadline is March 1st. Another benefit of submitting by February 15th is that we will work with students if things aren't complete. By March 1st, if things aren't complete, it's too bad. They will be rejected. So definitely a huge benefit, and it's only 2 weeks. So it's not that long. We all know it's not that long. For students, 2 weeks is a long time. Okay, so this is where we get into the nitty-gritty of the application. And one of the benefits that I had because of COVID, if you can believe that, there was a positive that came out of it, is that my team was able to review scholarships for the past couple of years, which was a great exercise for us because it gave us an insider view of a competitive application. So I'm going to share tips with you, things that I saw, what made a really good application and what was a little weak in an application that would push a student into number 5 when there are 4 awards and then a student is number 5. So it's important that the student is telling their story. So I joke that what I hope tonight is that you dream and you hear me say, tell your story, because that is so, so important when we're looking at an application. The student profile is the student name, their GPA, their test scores, their major, what school they're interested in going to. That tells us a story. That tells us that a student is interested in education, that they want to go to University of Oregon, that they have a 3.28. So we get that information. Great, that's part of the story. And then the transcripts come in. When I look at a transcript for a student who says I'm interested in education, I'm going to look for classes that support that. I'm going to look for classes that support child development, psychology, and if they're taking dual enrollment, they're taking some education classes. So I'm going to look for that. If I don't see anything like that fits what they've said is their major, that's kind of a red flag. Like if they say I'm interested in medical, but yet we don't see a lot of science and math. So transcripts are important. Then we get to the personal statements. I'm going to spend more time on personal statements in the activities chart. And then the other documents and essays are really important. Mainly those are like, if a student applies for a membership scholarship, they need to attach their membership document. Or one of the essays, there's a union scholarship if their parents are involved in a specific union. And the essay is about that union, like tell us about the union and what union means to you. So more specific to the scholarship opportunity and not so much about the student. Transcripts are really, really important. Do any of you able to access your student transcripts and upload them to OSAC? Just a yes or a no would be great. So transcripts are tricky, and it's the main reason that an application will get rejected. Great. Okay, so I've got some yeses, I've got some nos. Okay, and then I have a question. We'll get back to that. So the missing or incomplete transcript is the only reason that it will be rejected. So if we get this by the February 1st deadline, we're able to work with students on this to say, hey, your transcript is incorrect. If not, then we're not able to work with them. Mainly for you all to remember is that they must include fall term grades. So if some of you are able to upload, which is great. If you're not, check with the school's registrar. They're very familiar with the OSAC scholarship application and will know which ones to upload. So this is a great question. So yes, all of the scholarships that I had listed are part of our OSAC scholarship application and include those in that 600. So they do not need to do them individually. Okay, so we're going to spend some time on personal statements. This is where I'm going to give you some examples that I saw and things that I saw. So each question has multiple parts. That's important to see. So what are your specific educational plans? That's number 1. Career goals is number 2. Why is number 3, and what inspires you is number 4. So what I have to do when I'm working with students is I will take each section and make it a header. So I have 4 headers, and then the student fills those sections in. And then I have them start connecting the dots, connecting those sentences. A student doesn't need to know what they're doing. They can be like completely clueless. So my son had no idea what he wanted to do. And so his specific educational plans were, there are 5 things I'm interested in. This, and this. I'm going to go to Lane Community College. I'm going to take classes in these so I can fine tune that. And then I'm going to transfer to the University of Oregon. And so those were his career goal was along those lines, but he didn't really know. So he didn't really specify what his career goal was. He just knew he had these interests. And then what inspired him was me. I was a single mom pretty much the whole time he was growing up, and I now have my doctorate. And so education is just a very important part in our family. So he used that. My mom's my inspiration. Education is important. I know I need that. So he didn't say, I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this is how I'm going to do it because I had a best teacher when I was in high school. It doesn't have to be that specific. The student tells their story. The first part, what are your specific educational plans, career goals, and why? That's really a sentence or two. What inspires you to achieve them is the rest of it. That's the heartstring. That's the rest of the essay. That's their story. So the next one, what have you done for your family or community that you care about the most and why? With Latino families, family and community is really, really important. I see a couple nods. So with more and more Latino students applying, what we're seeing is that they say, well, I help my family. We're here, my mom doesn't work, or she's not documented, or my dad works and my mom works, and we have siblings and I'm taking care of them, or I'm doing dinner and homework and this and that. I see that so many times. It's not enough because there are so many students that are telling that same story. What they're missing is the why. Are they doing it because that's their culture? Well, that's not enough. Are they doing it because they believe in it? Are they doing it because it's expected of them? That's not really heartstrings. Or are they doing it because they understand why they're doing it, the benefit, how it's helping their parents, how it's helping their siblings? We had one student go a little bit further about the student struggle in school because English is a second language. And so he tied that in to his siblings of, I want to help my siblings so when they're in school, it's not so hard. So tying it to something that's specific to the student, not just, I do this because this is what we do. It's expected of me. Just doing a little time check. Okay. And so the why, again, is the most important part on this section. Why are they doing it? The what have you done for your family or community? 1 or 2 sentences. They only have 1,000 characters, about 500 words to do this. It's not a lot. So the third one, describe a personal accomplishment and the strengths and skills you use to achieve it. With this, we often, again, we'll see from Latino students that they are, how they're here now, they're going to school, they're learning the language, they're doing well in school. So what? So what? Ask your students, so what? That's a big deal. That's a big deal to high school students. But what strengths and skills did they use to achieve it? Perseverance. They studied a lot. They sought out people to practice English with. They went and volunteered. They, whatever it is, whatever the strengths and skills that they used, that's what we want to know. The personal accomplishment is important because that starts the story, but that's a simple, pretty much 1 sentence, maybe 2 sentences. So there was a woman or student who, a female who, she lost a bunch of weight. So her personal accomplishment was, I lost a bunch of weight. Well, I've seen that story a lot and I need to lose a lot of weight. So I know that that's hard to do. I know that that's a big deal. But what she did was she talked about the strengths and skills. Where did she get her power from? Where did she get the strength to do that when she's living? So she talked about how in her household, they don't eat healthy. Mom doesn't buy healthy food. She doesn't have healthy choices. They don't have dinner together. So for a high school student, that's pretty challenging to figure out how to create a meal plan around their family. And then she figured out like the whole exercise part. She did some research on her own to find out what would work and what doesn't work. So she told us all of that. It was phenomenal. It wasn't just like, oh, it was really hard and I struggled. And so that's what a lot of students are missing is the so what. Significant change or experience that has occurred in your life. With this one, unfortunately, we see a lot of students who are dealing with alcoholic parents, parents who are divorced, parents who are drug addicts, parents who are just missing. It's terrible how frequently we see that story, but it's not enough. What's the so what? Have your students go deeper. How are they responding to that? What are they learning about themselves? These are hard conversations to have. I worked with the youth at McLaren, one of the Oregon Youth Corrections facilities. And these boys didn't know me. They didn't know me from anybody. And here I am. And I'm saying, okay, let's have these conversations. No, go deeper, go deeper. And they're like, really? Who are you? I don't know you. But I worked with them and I got to know them and had those conversations with them and asked them questions. And one student, oh, so proud of him. So he would not look at me when we first started meeting and he would hardly talk. By the end of our meeting and working through these personal statements, he was looking at me, he was talking more, and he had a story to tell. And one of the things he didn't want to use, and I don't know if you experienced this with your Latino students and families, he didn't want to, so he's Native American. He didn't want to use that. He didn't want to use his struggles as being Native American or being at McLaren because he thought it would be negative. And I said, that's your story. I said, tell your story. And so we fleshed it out. We had conversations about it and we fleshed it out. And he worked hard at that. And it was a struggle. I had another student there that similar situation. And at the end of it, it was really sweet because I didn't know. I'm like, am I pushing these boys too much? And they said, Miss Ellis really pushed us and made us think outside the box and kept saying, so what? So it was hard for me to do that, but they appreciated it. One of the boys, the Native American boy, he graduated. He went through graduation. He actually did a graduation speech and it was beautiful. And his folks that he worked with said that he probably would never have done that without the experience of working with me on these questions and telling his story. So your role is so important when working with these students. I'm somewhat familiar with the work that you do and how you work with students. And so they trust you already. So to have those conversations with them, to get them to tell their story is challenging, but so worth it. All right, any questions on personal statements?
There's a question in the chat.
No, they are 4 separate statements. I love this question. So does the application allow for the student to tie these in for coherent, or are they separate? So they are separate, but that goes back to, I love the word coherent, of the whole application being coherent. Have the student think back to their profile, have them look at their transcripts. We're going to talk about activities chart so that all of the pieces are coherent to tell a story. But yet they are 4 separate questions. And part of the reason for this is that even within each question, the students struggle in high school. They really struggle to answer the question. Even in 500 words, they're all over the place. And so when they do it within the 4, they have to get very clear, and they don't have a lot of leeway to get fluffy or add extra or not tell the story. Great question. Okay, so let's move on to the activities chart. This is another very important piece of the application. So just a couple examples beforehand. We had one student who talked about community service in their personal statements. And the student was doing quite a bit out in the community, but then we get to the activities chart and it's completely missing. So your students can't make the reviewers work hard. They need to include and cross-check and double-check that the information is there, especially since you saw that one of our scholarships really looks at community service. So that should be in their activities chart. One thing I want to mention about personal statements that I forgot to say, another personal accomplishment is a student who gets a 4.0 or a 4.82, which I still don't understand how that works, but are getting these really high GPAs. We already know that because the student put this in their profile. So remember at the beginning, we talked about the profile and the student puts in their GPA. We already know how hard that is to do. We really don't want to see it again because this is another opportunity to tell your story about something different. So don't tell us about the 4 point whatever GPA, tell us something different. If the student is adamant, they're like, nope, I'm talking about my 4 point because that is huge and no one in my family and I worked really hard, then we want to know what are the strengths and skills you use to achieve it. The other thing we're going to look at with a 4.0, it could come down to this with like, if it's a handful of students where it's a 4.0 taking regular high school level classes and a 4.0 with a student who's taking AP dual credit college now classes. So, and that's where you can come in and really look at their pieces to see what they can be talking about. With the activities chart, students can list up to 20 activities. We want to see something in each one. So again, this is where you can come in to have those conversations. When I was working with the boys at McLaren, they're like, well, we don't do anything. We're locked up. I'm like, okay, well, you work in the laundry? Do you work in the kitchen? Do you do the garden? I mean, they have a host of jobs that they can do. And they're like, well, yeah, but that's no big deal. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Do you work by yourself? Well, yeah. I said, okay, so time management, organization, monitoring yourself, getting the work done. So again, having those conversations, asking the students, what are you doing? Well, I'm not in football. I'm not band. I'm not choir. I'm not chess club. I'm not doing anything like that. So I just started asking other questions. Well, do you tutor? Have you mentored? Do you work with other kids in your class? And just to start having them think a little bit differently about what they do. Volunteering is not just in their community, but with their family. So if your student is working, is working with the siblings, is doing dinner, is not able to do school activities or work because they're spending time helping the family, this is where they're going to put it. They're going to put it in their volunteering section, and they're going to explain what they're doing, how many hours, and then in the section where they are putting that in there, that's where they can talk about cooking, babysitting, supporting, getting them to and from school, those types of things. And then paid work history can be babysitting. Paid work history can be, I'm a dog walker. So anything they've been paid to do. I had one of my colleagues, Kristen Vreeland, I think some of you probably know her. I had her daughter come over. She's 15, not quite ready to have a job yet. And I'm like, I need help with my yard. So she came over, I paid her. That's paid work history. So your students are probably mostly going to think about a job, like a real job. I'm going to McDonald's, or I'm going to, the theater, and I'm working there and getting a check. That is not necessarily paid work history. It's anything they've gotten money for. Questions about the activities chart. This is an area that is often lacking with students. We don't see enough. We know they're doing more, but they don't know how to pull it out of their brains and think that it means something, that they can put it in their activities chart. A question I received the other day was, if a student is in National Honor Society, so any other groups that may be similar to National Honor Society. So there's a student who's in National Honor Society, so that would go in school activities. But then part of National Honor Society is volunteering. And so the student has gone out and done, I'm just going to make up five projects. And it's a requirement of National Honor Society, but they added it in the volunteer section. So it's okay to do a repeat. So if they're a part of any club, they can put that in school activities. And if they're doing any fundraising or any volunteer events for that particular club, then putting it under volunteering. We see stuff like they helped with the school dance. So it's things, it doesn't have to be an official club. It's, oh yeah, I helped with the school dance. Or I know people don't do this anymore, but I helped my teacher clean the chalkboards, and I just see the erasers clapping right now. I don't know why, but like they help the teacher in the classroom or something. So anything is a school activity. So as you're working with students now, especially your underclassmen, start talking to them about things that they can be doing from now until they graduate, with school activities, with volunteering, with paid work history, because the activities chart could be something that makes or breaks a student moving forward into the final getting awarded, or here's an alternate student. The other thing we want to see here with, if a student, I mentioned education or the medical field, then what we want to see in their activities chart is that they've done something in education or in the medical field. So have they volunteered? I don't know if candy stripers are still a thing, but were they a candy striper? Or did they go and, help in the elementary school because they're interested in being an elementary school teacher? So did they figure out an opportunity to go help in the elementary school and help a teacher? Have they done anything in a community group where they go and they do some work with students? Even the Smart Reader program and things like that. So whatever they're interested in doing, there should be some activities that fit with their projected future. So this part about how to stand out, I think is slowly becoming less of an issue. You know, it used to be back in the day, which was a long time ago for me, but that it was merit based. A student had to have good grades. They had to be taking, you know, really high level classes. They had to be involved in everything and had to be valedictorian. And those are the folks that got scholarships. But more and more, our donors are seeing that students can take a lot of different pathways. So they're going to look at their academic successes. Student has a 2.3 as a freshman, but over time, by the time they're a senior, they have a 3.2. So that's an academic success that over time, they learned how to study. They learned how to do homework. Their GPA started going up. Extracurricular activities are important. So when they're talking about the extracurricular activities, like supporting the family, why is that important to them? Even if the student doesn't think it's important, even if the student is like, I'm doing it because I have to, talk with them about maybe why it could be important to them so that they can tell their story. They're not really lying. You're just helping them kind of understand that family. I don't know. They're not lying. They're just expanding on their story a little bit. And it must be something that they're not even thinking about right now. Their unique skills, strengths, accomplishments, passions. So one of these, there was a student who, he was my son's friend, and part of his statement, what he didn't even think about, there was a boy with Down syndrome. He was a freshman. He's kind of walking around school. He had his backpack and he had his school class schedule, and nobody was really helping him. Nobody was talking to him. And so my son's friend said, hey, you know, are you lost? Can I help you? And the boy's like, yeah, I'm trying to get to my class. And they were like BFFs for the rest of the school year. Anytime that boy with Down syndrome saw my son's friend, he would wave and say, hey, and hi. And he was so excited about that. And so I talked to my son's friend and I said, that's a big deal. He's like, no, it isn't. I just helped. And I said, who else was helping? Did anybody else notice him? Did anybody else say, can I help? He's like, well, no. And I said, that's unique. Well, I said, it's hard not to say his name, but he is now an elementary school teacher, and it's absolutely beautiful. So that was getting chills because he knew then, like, that's just who he is. And now he's working with elementary school kids. So your students aren't going to know, most likely, they're not going to know what makes them unique, what makes them stand out, why a donor would want to pay attention to them instead of a different student. So that's where you can help them tell their story. It's important for them to know who's reading their application. And we've already talked about them answering the entire question. And then they should avoid slang or humor. So another one of my son's friends who thought that he was really funny was using some humor. This was back in 2012. And I had no idea what he was saying. I'm like, dude, I don't know what that means. And I said, if I was reading your application, I would just have to skim over it because I wouldn't know. Well, it's even changed more wow, that was a long time ago. So it's important that they don't use slang or humor because the folks reading their application, educators, retired educators, volunteers from the community, the actual donors, they're not keeping up with slang and humor for high school students right now. So it's important not to have that. And then avoid repeating application info. And that's like that GPA that I talked about earlier. It's important that that they have them proofread and they get feedback. Talking to one of our schools that we work with down in South Medford, and she said, you know, I'm not able to help all the kids. I can help some of them, but she says, you know, at the last minute, a student might bring it in, and their application is just lacking. And so she's like, she feels bad because she doesn't know how to like reach all the kids and tell them that. So if you're working even with a group of students, you can share some of this information with them. If you're not able to work with all of them individually, it's hard to do. Let's see what else on this one. So it's just important who's reading them. One of the things that we're not focusing on as much, and I can't really speak to it a lot because I don't know how it's going to play out and it's fairly new, is that we have so many students that English is their second language. We used to really focus on grammar and punctuation and sentence structure and those kinds of things. And we're not doing that as much. So we're really reading the story. Now, that's not to say don't have your students spend time on all of those things. But we want, we want to make sure it's in their voice. We can tell when somebody's helped them too much. So just know that just telling their story is what we're looking for. Okay. Lots of other scholarships that I'm kind of preaching to the choir right now. But you have a lot of scholarship opportunities that you probably know about for your students. A lot of our essays, our personal statements that we use can be used for other applications. So they can tweak those statements or they can do a copy and paste. We've heard that a lot from students. They're like, no, you were right. So doing the OSAC scholarship application is a great place to start, and then encouraging them to continue looking for scholarships because there's money out there. There are some big databases. So the College Board has a bunch of scholarships that they list for students. Studentaid.gov has a bunch of scholarships. And then if your students are connected with CIS, they have a huge list of scholarships in there as well. So those are 3 places that we really like to promote because they're good places to go. Your kids aren't going to get spammed, and we know the scholarships are vetted. So tips to get started, your students, the first thing is that FAFSA ORSA, get it done as soon as possible. Making sure that they really understand OregonStudentAid.gov, that they bookmark this. They're going to need to go into a lot to create their application, but then to go in and check to see, was I awarded? Have I been denied? What's the status of my application? Filling out that Oregon Promise application, again, 5 questions, so worth it. And then our scholarship application. We have a few areas that you can get connected. It's not so much student facing. The Instagram it's fairly new for us. We have a YouTube channel that has some great videos, and we're starting to add more to it. So if you want to follow us on any of these social media, that would be fabulous. And then any Aspire sites in here? Any of you have an Aspire program at the school that you're working in? Just a yes or no would be great. So Aspire is a great opportunity. I knew I recognized some names. Aspire is a great opportunity. If you're not connected with your Aspire program, let me know, and I would love to help you get more connected with them. I think we can do more in our schools to reach our students by working together. And Jaime, thank you for that yes with 2 exclamation marks. I love it. And I hope I said your name right. I think I heard Jeanette say it earlier. And then, so really learning, we'll have mentors that we can help extend and enhance your reach. There's training that we provide. Here's one way you can reach me as well. This is a little bit easier than my email address, but contact us at Aspire Oregon. So if anything comes up between now and then let me know. And then here's my contact information for a direct outreach. The contact us goes to just a couple of us. Would love to hear from you. Even just to hear what you're doing in your schools, how you're working with your students, and then how we can better support you. Any final questions?
Lori, do you go to, well, not go physically, but virtually to schools and present to students and so
We
on?
do.
Is that part of
Yeah.
your?
It's one of our favorite things to do. We love presenting to practitioners, but when we can get in front of students, oh, so much fun. Yep. There is on the website, the OregonStudentAid.gov website, on outreach and resources, there is a request a presenter, and that's the best way to do that. And we'll get somebody out there. And we are starting to be able to go in person. So if you are having an in-person event, state that in the form, and then we'll see if we're able to go. No, they're not able to do OSAC if they can't do FAFSA or ORSA, but it's so rare that a student can't do FAFSA or ORSA. It's like exchange students. So DACA and undocumented students can do ORSA, and then FAFSA for US residents. I don't know if you have an example, Fernanda, but if you come across that, let me know, reach out to me. We do have, I can, let me do this and then I'll get to, so this is our website. So here's the website. Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So OregonStudentAid.gov. Here's the outreach and resources where you would go to click on request a presenter. Here's the YouTube channel. Here are some upcoming webinars, and we are going to be doing some of those in Spanish. And then here's the apply here for your students. So they click on apply here. And then the OSAC scholarship application. They can also get to Oregon Promise, FAFSA, and ORSA from here. So they would click on apply and then they have the login there. Our one Spanish speaker actually resigned and moved up to Washington. We do have a couple others that are going through testing right now with the state. And so hopefully they're able to get through so that they can be approved to do some Spanish presentations. If you want a Spanish presenter, put that in your outreach request, because we do have partners. And our boss, Juan, he speaks Spanish, so put it in there. There are definitely no guarantees when it comes to Spanish speaking, but we are definitely working on it and trying to increase that for Oregon.
Lori, this was so informative. I want to thank you for taking the time to do this, and
My pleasure.
and for all of our participants to attend this session. And we thank you very, very much. We are going to take a, thank you for answering all the questions. We're going to take a 10-minute break. There's a question from Annabelle. Can students create an OSAC account in 11th grade, or do they have to wait until they're seniors?
They can. So this is my application. They can create what's called a test application. And then when they're ready to make it a real application, they'll be able to do that. It'll save all of their information. Great question.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Lori. Much appreciated. We are going to take a 10-minute break to transition on to, so if you're going to stay here for the next session, I think you still need to check out. Is that correct, Teddy? So that we
yes, we're going to end and then we'll log in again.
Okay. Thank you so very, very much. Very informative. Thank
Bye,
you, Lori.
everyone. Hope to hear from you.